Hello, 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 hello. My name is Oliver G. This is the Earful Tower podcast, a show all about Paris, all about France, and as I like to say, interviews with the people who make the City of Light shine. If you're new around here, imagine if you're brand new. I'm talking to you. This show is all about Paris, all about France, new guest, usually every Monday, but for November, I've been doing 2 a week. And today's episode is with Anna Kloots. More on her in a second. But like I said, if you're new here, this is a show that I've been doing for about 3 years. The idea is to make you feel like you're in Paris, even if you're not. And if you are in Paris, it's to give you a few extra tips and tricks along the way. So today's episode, Anna Kloots. I met her on Bastille Day. Actually, we were in the same apartment watching the fireworks. And we got chatting a little bit, and fast forward to quite recently. In fact, I think it was the day just before the lockdown. I met up with her in front of the KB coffee shop in Pigalle, the 9th. And look, we sat down, we had an interesting conversation. Who is she? She's a true nomad, according to her website. She's a travel blogger, a writer, a créatrice if you go by her Instagram page, where over 100,000 people follow her adventures, and she posts extremely lovely pictures. So we talked about that, we talked about Paris writing, but what we talked about most was the idea of having a new start in Paris. She had the misfortune, or the fortune perhaps, to move to this country in 2020 when everything obviously was upside down, so it's got to have been a pretty unusual time to start a life in Paris. But what I really like about Anna is she grabbed it with 2 hands, grabbed it by the shoulders and give it a good shake. And I really enjoy following her. She's got this fresh perspective on Paris, extremely different to last week's podcast with Ronnie, who's lived here for 30 plus years on the Ile Saint-Louis. A whole different perspective, but that's what you get with this show. All sorts of people sharing their stories, and that's why I like doing it. So here we go. Anna Kloots talking about Paris. You can find her on Instagram at Anna Kloots, or her website annakloots.com. And as always, hang around at the end when I'll read out some emails from you guys. But let's get into it. Welcome to the studio.
The Studio sur la Rue, I love it.
This is a crazy studio. For the people at home, we're sitting on the corner of Rue des Martyrs and Avenue Trudaine. And you were just saying you love it around here.
I do. I love it everywhere in Paris. I've yet to find an area that I'm like, no, I don't like this bit.
There's got to be some places that we could take you where you wouldn't like, surely.
I'm sure, but I haven't found them yet.
Are you really this positive, or is this an act? I need to know.
I really am.
Okay.
I don't know why,
well,
but I am.
That might help in today's topic of why people, and especially Americans, love Paris so much. But first, let's set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
Where we are, specifically. I'm sure the listeners at home have figured we're sitting next to a road. There's the proof, right?
Right next to the road.
But the area in general, you're saying that you're falling in love with it. What do you like about it? Maybe you can describe where we are.
I love these quintessential Parisian streets, and this is one of them. You walk down this block, and you can feel the history. There's everything here you could ever want in Paris, starting with the little antique merry-go-round.
Oh, yeah.
Then you just walk down this road and there's everything. There's the fromagerie, there's the boucherie, there's the French vegetable spot, there's this place that specializes only in meringue because that exists here. And then there's just shop after shop like that, and they're all tiny and they've all been owned for generations and generations, and the people inside them are adorable, and it's just everything you want. You could come here and just walk this street and leave, and you would have been like, I saw Paris.
It's true, and and the street that Anna's referring to is Rue des Martyrs, the one that goes down. You probably all know it at home, but they're probably nodding.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I
it's
know
the one
that.
that goes all the way down. It starts up in Montmartre, actually, and that side's kind of weird too. It's less lively, but like more interesting shops and stuff.
Okay.
But you're right. It's a pretty good slice of like village life in Paris.
Such a slice of life.
Why do you think? I don't want to ask you on behalf of everyone in America, but why do you find that to be so appealing, coming from Ohio and New York?
Because nothing like this exists in America.
What do you mean? Explain that to me. Not in America? Not even in New York City?
In New York City, kind of, but it's not the same because it's just not as old. You walk down this street and you're realizing something is from 1490 something, and you can't even fathom this as an American because nothing in our country is from 1490 anything.
Yeah.
And it just oozes this romance and charm and history. And that doesn't exist in the U.S. Everything in the U.S., especially like, I grew up in a very small suburban town in Ohio, and then I moved to New York. Everything is new and shiny and big, and nothing has this tiny little old charm. Nothing has been passed down from generation to generation to generation that long.
Yeah. So how do you get... So people who live in Ohio, I've never been there. I'm sure it's lovely.
It is lovely in a way.
Well, how do they get their kicks when they want to feel like, like the feeling that you get in Paris?
In Paris.
What's the equivalent? Like, is there a sort of main street in your old town that is from 19...
I was going to say Disney World.
Oh, really?
Disney World is our equivalent. If you go to Epcot, that's about as close as you can get.
What's that? Epcot?
Epcot Center. In Disney World?
I've never been to Disney World.
Oh my God, you
mean
must go to Disney World.
In
America. Yeah, in
I've never
Orlando.
been. No.
Oh, you need to add this to your bucket list.
What you're saying, I don't even understand. Epcot Center?
Epcot Center.
What's that?
So experimental prototype community of tomorrow is what Epcot stands for. And Walt Disney built this to sort of give Americans a taste of Europe and a taste of the world. Oh. So part of it's in 2 parks, and one of the side is all like science and like exploration and things to challenge your mind, and the other part is like a trip through the world for people who are never going to be able to see all these places. Ooh. And you walk through, and it has the architecture, and it has little shops, and you can buy food from that place, and it's really cool.
And it is actually cool. Because I've never been,
It's amazing.
When I think of Disneyland, Disney World, whatever, I just imagine like long lines to ride average rides.
I'm a Disney nut. I've been to every park in the world,
really?
And I was going to the one in the U.S. at least once a year.
Really?
I'm a big time Disney person, so I love it. But I think the key is you can't go with your kids ever. My rule is I will never take my children there. It's like my happy place.
That sounds wrong. Isn't it all about taking kids there?
But it's not, because then you're standing in lines with screaming kids that are like, I want cotton candy, and like that's not it. So I go for me, but yeah.
Okay.
Disneyland is kind of the best taste you can get. I mean, my town in Ohio has like an old strip, but it dates back, like the oldest thing in my town is from 1915. So like we're talking 500 years. It's just not the same.
Yeah. So I'm from Australia, where it's a kind of similar story. I mean, there's a lot of history there, but not buildings and cheese shops or whatever that have been owned by people for generations and generations. So I get that. But what else? And this time I want you to speak on behalf of Americans.
On behalf of Americans in general.
I'm just curious. Like, I know a lot of Americans, probably follow your adventures on Instagram.
Yes.
What is the Instagram handle?
Anna Kloots, just my full name.
You can go and check it out now as we're talking, folks. But I'm sure you got a lot of American followers.
Yeah, it's like 80%.
Right, who are salivating at these adventures that you're having every day. Right?
Yeah.
Why? Why are they salivating?
I think because it is so far removed from their reality. It's not just the oldness of it, but the architecture of this city is on another level. No other city really looks like this. It's beautiful. There's this culture that exists here that centers around food and enjoyment and wine, and that is such a foreign concept to Americans.
Right.
The food itself is rich, and you cook with butter, and you just eat bread whenever you want. No one here is dieting. No one here is exercising. I mean, they are, but they're not like at home. No. So it's just this world that exists to an American that is the complete opposite and almost idealized and just sort of oozes romance, in our opinion. Like, we have this idea that France is just romantic, from what you eat to the kind of places you live in to what your city looks like to, what going on a date would be like. It's just, everything's so different.
And so you've been here for coming close to a year now, right?
Yes, and I studied abroad here 10 years ago, so I've lived here before for 6 months.
Okay, so is it living up to these romantic ideals that you sort of...
It honestly surpasses them for me every single day, and people ask me all the time, like, doesn't it wear off? Like, when you're not on vacation, your day-to-day there, doesn't it wear off? But to me, no, it actually gets better, because the fact that it's just a Wednesday and I can sit here and be looking at this.
Yeah, you got the carousel view behind you. So
I have the cutest view. There's like twinkle lights and children with curly hair and their moms, and like the fact that I can just do this on a Wednesday, that this is my reality, makes that day-to-day actually so special that it takes living here to another level, because I'm not counting down how many days left of my vacation there are.
Interesting. I think I can sort of empathize with that, because when I moved here I had a full-time job, and it was like Monday to Friday, like 9 to 6 or whatever, and I didn't get this feeling. In fact, I've talked about this before. This feeling that you and I have got sitting here on a Wednesday afternoon, the freedom to sit here and chat and look at the streets and enjoy it. It makes such a difference being here with this sort of open-ended time plan.
Yeah.
And
you're never like, I don't have time to just sit there.
Yeah.
If you're on vacation for a week, you're never going to do this.
Yeah,
you're like, I can't. I got to get to the
True.
Louvre, and then I got to go here, and then that shop's going to close at 7. But when you do, and like I'm a writer, so I spend all of my time walking around writing in my head, writing notes on my phone.
Observing.
I bring my laptop somewhere different, and I work from the street. So I'm really immersed in the city all the time. It's very rare that I'm just sitting in my apartment.
Cool.
So that makes me fall in love with it all the more.
You bring up your writing, and I want to talk about that in detail here. But first, I want to go back to something you said I'm intrigued by, and that's like Americans, at least yourself and surely others who love Paris, love the idea of good food, eating good food, cooking, all that kind of stuff. What surprises me is how come, like, why isn't it an available option in the States?
It's just not. And I don't know if it's, there are no French restaurants. There are no French supplies. When I went home during the confinement in March, I had been here for 2 months already, and I was just like desperate to find like a cornichon, like a proper jar of mustard, anything.
Really?
It doesn't exist.
When you went home, did you mean to New York or?
I went home, and then I actually went to LA to be with my sister. Okay. So I was in LA, and I found one tiny little French grocery store called Monsieur Marcel, and I became their best customer.
Really?
I was there every day because I could find like my mustard, and they had baguettes. They weren't real baguettes, but they were close.
It feels like they're missing a trick over there then.
They really are. And I think it might be the French cuisine is a little bit complicated to cook, so it's not something, Italian is simple ingredients, it's simple recipes. French is much more refined, right? There's a lot going on. I've taken an essential sauces class here and learned how to make the 5 essential sauces.
Are you saying salsa or sauce?
Sauces.
I'm imagining first a dance class.
No, I took an essential French sauces class. It was 9 hours long.
Just one day?
One day, okay. 9 hours to learn.
Tell me that 9 hours in 1 minute.
Béarnaise, white veal stock, fish stock, which then we made into red wine sauce and a white wine cream sauce. We made vinaigrette, we made chocolate ganache. Like, it was crazy. Amazing. It was so fun.
So they just basically said, we're going to teach you all the main sauces.
The essential sauces you need to know to cook French food.
And you actually feel that you learned that?
Yeah, 100%. I tried to make Béarnaise a couple weeks later, and it's very difficult. So I didn't actually succeed, but I know the method, and I know why I failed, and I will keep trying.
So did you take cheat sheets when you were doing that?
Yeah, I took like notes and everything and little videos.
And were you doing it on like Instagram stories and stuff as well?
I was, yeah. Afterward, I put a lot of the stories up and saved them, and I shared the recipe for the French vinaigrette because the salad dressing here is like the best salad dressing in the whole world.
Better than Ohio?
Ohio. This is the problem. An American thinks of salad dressing, and we think of ranch. You know what ranch is?
Yeah, like
it's the worst. It's not even ingredients. It's like you look at the list of ingredients, and you're like, I can't put this in my body.
Yeah.
So then you come here, and you order a salad, and it comes, and you taste it, and you're like, this salad is the best thing I've ever eaten in my life. What is this dressing? And it changes it, and you go home and you can't eat salad dressing anymore because now you're back in the Giant Eagle and your option is ranch, and you're like, no. So I shared the recipe because it's so easy, and I was like, Americans need this.
I think it's really cool how, and I said this before I pressed record, how positive and enthusiastic you are for trying everything here, because it's like there are a lot of bitter and jaded expats like myself here.
You can't be bitter and jaded.
I'm kidding. But there are actually people who've been here for a lot longer who don't take the same pleasure that like a lot of people who come here in their first year, maybe they start to build a following then or whatever, and they're doing it in a whole different way. But you come here with a strong following on Instagram, hundreds of thousands of people, you know the game, and you're here like, mining this country for the best things to do.
I've been obsessed with French since I was 12. I don't know why. I started taking French as a little girl. I just fell in love with it. So honestly, to me, like, it's such a privilege to be able to live here and be here. And I always just, like, I want to take advantage of the fact that I can be here, and I'm not taking it for granted. And I know at any moment they could kick me out. They could be like, goodbye, your visa's up, and you have to go home. So I literally live every day here, like, what can I see today? What can I do today? And, in my opinion, like, you choose to be an expat, or at least most people do.
Yeah.
I chose this life.
Yeah.
Why would I move to France and not try to understand everything French, dive in, visit the museums, learn how to cook the food, try the crazy food even though it sounds crazy? Like, if you're moving to another country and you're not willing to really dig in and, you know, mine that country, as you said, then why are you here? If I wanted to eat salad every day, I would have stayed in America.
With ranch dressing.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. So
you gotta soak it up.
You can maybe you can teach me, just speaking of social media for a second, what makes a good Instagram story?
I always show the littlest things in Paris. And I always set it to music because there's always some kind of music playing in my head that other people aren't hearing, but I do.
Yeah.
So I always just sort of bring the way I'm looking at something to life as best I can. So I'll capture something that other people might think is ordinary. I set it to some kind of music that I feel like goes with it. And I usually might write something that's honestly just my stream of consciousness of like what I'm actually thinking when I see that thing. And then people always will write me and be like, I feel like I'm seeing a whole new Paris, or I never wanted to go to Paris in my life and now you've made me want to go there. Or I've lived in Paris my whole life and I've never thought it was great and now you've convinced me the country I live in and this city is amazing. I'm like,
isn't that nice?
It is amazing.
Yeah. But so Anna Kloots on Instagram, if you guys want to be scrolling through as we're talking. Sometimes people like, unless you're driving.
Yeah, don't do that.
If you're driving too when you get home. But let's switch it now. You mentioned writing. You are working on 2 books.
Yeah.
This is what takes up your time, or like
Yes.
when you meet someone at a, like an event or something, they say, "Hey, I'm John. I'm an engineer." What do you respond?
I respond, "Hi, I'm Anna. Je suis écrivaine," which means I'm a writer, and then I almost cry because I can't actually believe that I'm saying that and that it's true, and that, like, that's my job now.
And so this is your first book, though?
Yeah.
So what have you already got it? Someone's going to publish it?
Yeah, it's going to be published with HarperCollins in the spring. The first one that I'm co-writing with my sister, and then the second one is being shopped around right now. So I'm taking meetings with the publishers and trying to figure out where that one's home is going to be, because depending on like what category your book falls into, certain publishers are a better fit.
It's super important to get the exact category right. It's
very important.
But what sort of books are we talking about here? Or are you sworn to secrecy?
No, I'm not at all. The first one is about the experience that my sister went through during quarantine. We were there together. My brother-in-law passed away from COVID in July. He got it very early in March. He was one of the first bad cases in the U.S., and it literally, nothing about it makes any sense. But he had just everything that could possibly go wrong, and after 95 days in the ICU, he passed away on July 5th. And I was there with her through all of that, and it was really kind of an insane, an incredible and tragic and yet beautiful story. And so she was approached by a publisher who said, "We want this to be a book, and would you want to write a book?" And she said, "I don't write, but my sister does, and she's actually working on her own book right now. But she's been here through all of this, and what if we co-wrote it together?"
Right.
So now that's the project that I kind of put a pause on my own book and took that on because it's quite timely. We're having to deal with COVID, and the memories were so fresh. We wanted to get all of that out.
That's going to be pretty traumatic, working on something like that.
It is, but it's also very strangely therapeutic for her especially, and for me as well, because to sort of relive and process everything as you're writing it, it's a memoir. When you write a memoir, it forces you to sit back and really reflect and think about how that impacted you, changed you, what you learned from it, what you took away from it, how you felt that day. And every day of that 95 days was an absolute chaotic mess where we were just trying to eat and stay alive and make sure we're all okay. So we didn't have time to really reflect in it. So doing that now is actually a really, it's a very healing thing. It's hard. I sit there crying, writing it, and so does she. But
so much going on behind the scenes of everything
so
that you
much.
do, I imagine. Yeah, wow.
So much. And then the other book I've been writing since January, and that is about the last 10 years of my life, which I basically spent traveling to 83 countries.
Wow.
I was married.
I said wow, but it came out like why. But I guess both
why,
were.
Why and wow is I was a professional magician's assistant.
Is that so?
Yes, I was.
Professional magician's assistant. Okay.
I was married to a magician and left my job and became his assistant, and we basically spent 7 years traveling the the world together, and I worked for him. And
when you say assistant, do you mean like
I was
parking the car or
no,
disappearing?
thank God I was not on stage doing anything like that. I was very much like behind the scenes, managery type stuff.
Isn't everything behind the snes for a musician?
Everything is behind the scenes, but I was like behind the scenes. I was not like in a costume in a box being cut in half, thank God. But that my marriage ended really suddenly last summer, and I kind of was forced to start a whole new life, and that's why I moved here, because I just had to redo everything about my life, and that was my job. I lost my job. I had nowhere to live all of a sudden, and I was no longer married. And so I was like, I have to start everything over. And it was very traumatic and very sad, and all of a sudden I just kind of realized, okay, if I have this opportunity to start my life over, I'm going to do it exactly the way I want.
Cool.
And so I moved to Paris, and then thinking about everything that had happened to me made me realize, like, this is a book, actually. This is so a book. So that's the second one. It's about travel and transformation.
To categorize, isn't it? Because there's a bit of eat, pray,
it's
love
very
going on.
eat, pray, lovey, but it's also like
bit of Year in Provence going on, a little bit of Anna the Magician's Assistant going on.
It's a very complex, trying to even come up with like what the little like subtitle was gonna be. I was like,
there's a guy or a woman, I don't know, there's someone in Hollywood who's famous for doing that subtitle for films, like Jaws.
Really?
I can't even remember the Jaws one, but that was the one in my head. But it's like the water's not safe or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, everything has like a 6-word thing.
I need 6 words, but I
person.
cannot, because it's about loss and tragedy and finding yourself and France and traveling and it's about so many things. But it's also very therapeutic to write. It helps me so much to write and look back and kind of realize, like, I'm actually, everything that happened should have happened. I wouldn't change a thing. And I'm so glad I'm where I am right now.
Have you noticed, as we're sitting here, the different kinds of cars and scooters that have passed? The electric ones are a lot quieter than...
Yeah.
It's like this car going past now compared to the other one. It's weird, isn't it?
It is so bizarre.
If people are driving, listening to this, they'll be thinking cars are zooming past them. But back to the writing for a sec. As an American living here and writing, and that's your job, calling yourself a writer, do you feel... does it add something to the experience knowing that there are so many famous Americans who've done that before you?
Oh, 100%. And I basically scout out, like, so where did Hemingway write his book? Where did F. Scott Fitzgerald used to hang out? Yeah. Like, I have a joke among my French friends, because obviously, like, they all like the new trendy spots, and I'm like, if it wasn't established before 1800, I'm not interested. Yeah. So, like, when I'm on my own, I'm usually seeking out, like, the oldest possible places that exist here, and, like, that's where I want to station myself and write.
Yeah. I wonder if that will change over time for you as well, because it's also new to you as well. Like those French friends have perhaps been to all those places 40 times already. I
don't think so. When I'm like, that cafe used to be a brothel. It's the 5th oldest place in Paris, and they specialize in escargot. My friends are like, what?
Yeah. So I want a flat white somewhere.
Like, I don't want escargot. Like, are you crazy? And I'm like, I know, it's fine. But that's what my American friends here are for, because they share that same, like, wait, we're in Paris? We can eat in something that used to be a brothel in 15 something or other? Like, let's do it.
Let's talk a little bit about and sort of as time starts to run away from us. Actually, do you think, like, you coming here as, can we say influencer? I don't know what the definition.
Yeah, I don't love that word, but that's what it is. I know, because I think it has a negative connotation that that people have given it. But
what would you say?
I say, someone told me the other day that I'm a créatrice, and I was like, I love that. It's a French term for like,
anyone could be
you create things.
But someone who has 18 followers online could be a creator as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, something about the fact that there are a lot of people watching you do, which it definitely adds something. Like, you want to take the best picture or show the best side of, the sauce making class and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It definitely changes something. And
I show it in my own way. So I consider myself first and foremost like a writer, like a storyteller.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I do that on Instagram, and it influences. So I'm an influencer.
But my point was, like, I'm interested if there'll be a lot of people, not just Americans, people creative or otherwise, who want to do the similar kind of thing to what you've done and come to Paris and maybe work on a book or whatever. Mm-hmm. Do you think it's something that would be a lot harder for someone who doesn't have a following already that opens doors and stuff like it surely does for you? Do you think it'd be a whole different experience, or do you have advice for these people? Or
I feel like, to me, this city has always really inspired me, and it's somewhere I always knew I wanted to be. I fought really hard to study abroad here. My parents were not having it. I had to create a PowerPoint presentation to sell them. I came back here at least once a year over the last 10 years. Every time I did, I knew I belonged here. I honestly think that it has very little to do with my following. I'm thankful that allows more people to see my work, but I don't think it changes the quality of my work at all, or what my actual subject matter is, or what my content is. Because that truly just comes from the fact that I'm so crazy about this city, and it inspires things that I do and show. I'm thankful for how many people it can reach because of that. But I think if you really are somewhere where it truly just brings you to life in a way that other places don't, and I think those places exist for everyone, and it's not Paris for everyone. I know people who hate it here, and that's fine.
They're not listening, don't worry.
But my advice would be if you want to come here and it's really in you that you want to do that, then yes, nothing's going to get in the way of that. You don't need 100,000 followers. You just need to love the place you are and really believe that that's where you're supposed to be, and then mine it. Mine the city. Don't just sit in your apartment and be I don't speak French, I don't know my way around. If you're here, you have to take advantage of where you're living.
And it's a lot easier to tell a story if you believe in that story yourself, isn't it?
Exactly. And you find the story walking around, you find the story living. That I say all the time, any fictional thing I see about Paris, I was watching Emily in Paris, and I was the thing is this show is fun. It has its fun moments, but real life here is so much more interesting and more cliche in the good way than you could ever write in a show. Things happen that you're what? I was walking down the Rue Montegray on Saturday night, and there was someone tap dancing in front of a fromagerie. And there's a giant viola, and they're playing, and they're tapping, and a fromagerie is the background. And I was just if you wrote this, it would be too much. You couldn't make this up, because people would be that would never happen. But when you're here, it happens, and you stop and you stare and you wait until the tapping is done, because you're this is the best thing I've ever seen.
I used to live right there on that corner.
Really?
Exactly what you're talking about. But also, I think it's funny, there's also, I saw yesterday on my street in Montmartre, someone was delivering a package and blocking up the traffic. And the second car, a pregnant woman got out and started screaming, move the car, move the car. And the guy was beeping his horn so loudly, the pregnant woman's husband or whatever, beeping the horn so loud that everybody came out. And people started throwing things at the beeping guy,
gosh.
lemons and stuff at the car. And it was this scene and the delivery driver didn't care. And
of course not.
So your scene was really lovely and French. I feel like my scene was quite French as well, but maybe less lovely.
It is, but that's the thing. You have to take every time something's inconvenient here. I'm from New York. I'm used to, if it's 3 a.m. and I suddenly decide I want a jar of peanut butter, I can get it in 2 hours. It can be delivered, or I can go find somewhere that's serving it. Life in Paris is not convenient, but every time something happens that is so inconvenient, it honestly makes me smile, because I'm this is part of life here. This is what I chose. And when these things happen that are so French or so Paris, good or bad, it secures I'm here, I live here, and I just witnessed that, and I could only witness that here. And I
love your attitude.
I take the bad with the good.
Don't lose that attitude, Anna.
I take the bad with the good.
We can end on that. I think it was lovely to hear your positivity for 26 minutes, and I'm gonna let it warm my old stone heart. No, I'm kidding.
Talk to me in 6 years, but I think I'll be just as happy, to be honest. But we can check in and see.
We will do that. I would love to meet with you again. So thank you for your time, Anna, and good luck with those next 6 years.
Thank you.
Well, there you go, an episode with Anna Kloots. As I said, ANNAKLOOTS. You can Google her, find her on the exact same name on Instagram. And what a lovely woman. Lovely to meet her. Go and follow her. Say hello from me. And listen, if you really liked some of the things she said, want to find out more, of course, check out her Instagram and her website. But we also did a deep dive in the scroll where all the things she talked about and a whole lot more, we put it into a 10-page PDF. I shouldn't call it a PDF, it's a scroll really. And you can access it if you're a member. I'm just looking at it now. A new start in Paris with Anna Kloots. We got a few of her beautiful pictures, a little bit from her website, but more information on for example, I'm looking at it now, Epcot, which I didn't know anything about. Looking at the lovely pictures now, feel like I'm an expert. 5 of the oldest Paris restaurants. Speaking of old buildings, there's the 3 oldest houses. More on the French mother sources that Anna mentioned. It's all there, as every episode is. Pages and pages with links and links to learn more about Paris. But the only way you can get them is to become a member. So sign up on patreon.com/the Earful Tower and get a whole lot more out of this show. Otherwise, just go and listen to a bunch more of the episodes. There's plenty more like this one, and many that are very different. Now, I said that I'd finish on some emails and some news. One of the emails I want to read, there was actually a bit of a theme to the emails that came in this week. The main one was talking about Ronnie and the last episode. People were so kind. A lot of people loved hearing from him. I got several requests for him to be back on the show, which doesn't happen that quick usually. And he said he would. I said, in 6 months I'll get back to you and we'll do it again. And he was keen. And I got a lot of comments and emails on social media about people trying to guess his accent. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's the previous episode to this one. And it was lovely. I highly recommend you check it out. Now, the other thing I got a lot of emails about was, weirdly, the New York Times did a story recommending movies about Paris that'll transport you here. And a lot of people told me about one of those particular movies. And the email I'm going to read, one of them, is from Alex Tolkachev. And he says, Oliver, have you seen the 1976 short film by Claude Lelouch called C'était un rendezvous? Or, like, was it a meeting? Or it was a meeting? You could translate that, perhaps? He said, if not, here it is. It's 8 minutes long. I didn't need to click the link, Alex, or any of you other guys who linked it to me, because I've seen it. I love it. For you guys who aren't in the know, it's, as Alex said, a short movie, 8 minutes, and it's, imagine a GoPro stuck on the front of a Ferrari. But I don't think it's either of those things. It's the 1976 version of a GoPro and probably a different car. But it just zooms through the streets of Paris at about 5 in the morning. And I'm not going to spoil it. In fact, I'm not going to spoil it at all, but it ends with something rather charming. And a few people told me I should check it out. But Alex's email was quite specific. He said, I became aware of this movie yesterday, and I've been obsessed with it since. It is a cinematic and cultural touchstone. I don't know how you could incorporate it into your show. Wait a minute, I know exactly how. And this is where it gets weird. I'll tell you why in a sec. He says, you could retrace the route on your Vespa with either the lovely Lena filming or, to be truer to the original, with the phone mounted in front of the Vespa. It must be stabilized, of course. And if it's not possible to retrace the route exactly, you could do a similar version. If you do shoot the video, see how close to 8.5 minutes you can get, and maybe you could narrate it in an episode rather than having your audience listen to the Vespa. I'm going to stop there because this is kind of weird. I'd been thinking about this movie before the New York Times did this list, and I had the idea of recreating it on my scooter not long ago at all, in fact. But not just that, I did it. I recorded it right before the lockdown, so we're talking 3+ weeks ago, and I recorded it rather than doing the same as his. My Vespa it's not even a Vespa. My scooter isn't as quick as a Ferrari, so I just did a Montmartre version instead. And I went through all the quiet streets on one of the last days before lockdown, and I ended at the Sacré-Cœur. And in fact, I enjoyed it so much that I recorded a second video around the Opera and Place Vendôme. So I'll release all them to YouTube, and my idea was to put it with classical music. But Lena, my wife, she said, you should narrate them and put out 2 videos. I said, great idea. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So Alex, it sure was your idea, but we could say great minds think alike, perhaps. And there's a shout out for anyone who doesn't know. My YouTube page is rather active. You should check it out. Anyway, Alex continues and he suggests that I do a podcast episode about Paris movies, and I think it's a great idea. I absolutely will do it. He says you could even use the New York Times article and discuss which of those movies you've seen and liked. Hope this is useful. So long, and thanks for all the fish, which I'm sure is a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy reference. Alex, nice one there. But thanks for the email. You're exactly right. I'm going to do it. Great minds think alike, as I said. And thanks to everyone else who sent that for me. I'm glad we all have a similar taste in cool movies and stunts. Look, I'm going to finish up on a little bit of news. Kylie the Crocodile, the children's book that Lena and I did, it should be in the mail already, so I guess a lot of you guys will receive it really quickly. If you haven't bought it yet, theearfultower.com/croc children's book that Lena and I did. It's been so touching seeing how many of you people have got in on that, and we're really excited for you to get it. We're excited to see it ourselves. The other piece of news is kind of funny. The Earful Sweden, the podcast I've recorded on the side as a side gig. Don't worry, the Paris podcast is going to continue as... In fact, I did 2 episodes every week this month. It's just getting bigger and better, I think. But the Earful Sweden was meant to be launched really soon. But it's been 3 years since I published the Earful Tower podcast, this one you're listening to. I forgot how long it takes to get it accepted onto iTunes and Spotify. So we might have to wait just a little longer for that. But it'll be out soon. I'll make a big deal when it comes out. But listen, they're the things to keep an eye out for. Subscribe to my newsletter, follow on Instagram. You know what to do, guys. And if you've enjoyed this episode or any others, I highly recommend you tell a friend about it. It feels good to share. That's enough for me. Patreon.com/The Earful Tower. Support the show, make it better. I'll be back again on Thursday with an extra episode. Thanks very much for listening and have a lovely week. Merci, au revoir.